Dear chess friends, welcome to Jozarov chess channel and welcome back to the FIDE Grand Swiss in 2023. So after 7 out of the 11 rounds, the sole leader of this amazing event is the top GM from India, Vidit Santosh Gujrathi. Vidit is now the only player who has 5.5 points. 11 players with 5 points are now chasing Vidit in this next 4 rounds that we'll see in this amazing spectacular tournament, but I would not also exclude the other players who have maybe 4.5 points or maybe even 4 points, because many things can change in the next rounds. Maybe someone will have 4 out of 4 and can maybe turn things around. So in my opinion, we'll see really 4 heated rounds in this most spectacular tournament in 2023. So let's see now last Vidit's game. Vidit played now with the black pieces against Javokhir Sindarov. In my opinion, again, a spectacular, beautiful, sharp tactical game in the Italian opening. In my opinion, quite an instructive game. If you're familiar with the concepts of the Italian opening, I think you'll see here the most important ideas, the most important concept, most important strategies, most important breakthrough ideas. Really one of the most spectacular games from the round 7 of the FIDE Grand Swiss in 2023. So let's see now what happened with the white pieces. Javokhir Sindarov opened with the move e4. Vidit's response was e5. Knight to f3, and after a couple of moves, we have now the gioco piano. After d3, d6, we have now the gioco pianissimo, and after move c3, white is of course preparing in some lines to break and enter with move d4. We have normal development here by the dark square bishop to b6, not allowing by white to get an extra tempo by playing the move b4. Kingside castling, normal development, a4, a5, blocking out also white's potential progress here on the queen side, and it's also preventing again the move b4. We have bishop to e3, standard ideas. Many times we have seen white and black basically don't want to tolerate both of this powerful light square bishops and also the dark square bishop of blacks on this diagonal. So here white is also trying to trade it off, and it says, okay, I will accept it. After bishop to e3, f takes e3, kingside castling, knight to d2, normal development, and now Vidit makes, I think, a huge decision with the move knight to e7. Bishop to e6 has been played, queen to e7, queen to d7 are also good possibilities, but now Vidit is saying, I'll try to keep my pieces on the board. I will not trade off again the light square bishops, although as I said, this bishop is really unpleasant, but Vidit's idea is also a certain theoretical novelty, a move that has not been played so far in top GM level, or at least I'm not seeing games in the database. So really interesting idea, and I think it's a natural idea. The main concept is, of course, to break and enter with the move d5. Here we have knight to h4 by Javokhir Sindarov. He is, of course, trying in some lines also to occupy the f5 weakness, but this move is also now not attacking anymore the e5 pawn, which gives now Vidit a beautiful opportunity to break and enter immediately with the move d5. This pawn is now not attacked, so very important moment, I think, very important strategic moment for black now in the continuation of the game. I think this move liberates now black, because okay, it improves maybe the structure of white. White doesn't have anymore the double pawn structure, but after knight from e to d5, we have now a new position in which black is, we have to say it, a slightly maybe weak pawn on e5, but this d3 e3 structure is also not so good now for white. This structure d3 e3 can also be attacked by black's progressive plans in the next couple of moves. So it's now basically becoming an unbalanced, an asymmetrical, really dynamic position in the center of the board with opportunities for both sides, which I really like. Usually the Italian game is sometimes too static, too positional. You're just battling it out for tiny little square to occupy something somewhere. Now with this move order, we have really now wild, a spectacular position. Queen to f3 by Sindarov, connecting now the rooks, finishing the development. Knight to b6, hitting the bishop, and now e4. Here Javokhir is simply improving the structure a little bit. He's okay accepting the fact that he has now still the d3 weakness, but at least you have improved the e3 weakness. We have queen to d6 here. Vidit doesn't want to take out the bishop on c4, because from that square, if you play the knight to c4, then knight to c4 is going to happen, then knight to e3, and suddenly I think white could reroute maybe both of these powerful knights on the square f5, which would be very dangerous. Could get use also of the f-file attack, because in order to stop maybe maybe knight to f5. In some lines we have to play g6, then it's very risky. So very, very interesting also idea here by Vidit not to simply capture the bishop on c4. Many of us would play that, but here Vidit shows, I think, great positional understanding. Queen to d6, we have queen to e2, bishop to g4, knight to f3. Here Javokhir has to retreat again with the knight, and now rook to d8. Nothing spectacular, but this is how you play chess. Sometimes just a tiny little weakness can direct you in the middle game. Now, here Vidit is saying this is now your weakness. This is now your main positional problem in the continuation of the game. That's now simply my target for the next couple of moves. Very, very good move from a to d8. h3, kicking away the bishop, bishop to h5, and now g4. Risky choice here by Javokhir Sindarov. It of course kicks away the bishop, it paralyzes the bishop further on g6, but you have now left many weaknesses in front of your own king. Look at this, g3, f2, h2 weak, many positional problems. Also in some lines the d4 could be maybe attacking the next couple of moves. So very risky idea here by Javokhir. Better choice maybe is to control further the dark squares with the move queen to e3, waiting a little bit. You don't have to expose your king too much in the beginning of this game, but as I said, g4 was played by Javokhir, and here Vidit immediately retreats. Of course, we have rook from f to d1, trying of course to connect the rook to the weak pawn on d3, knight from f to d7. Nice positional maneuver here by Vidit. He's trying knight to c5, knight to e6, and then knight to f4, because you have advanced too much your pawns. As I said, the f4 weakness becomes now a new structural problem in white's position. So very nothing spectacular. The engine gives here still equal chances, but if someone would ask you which position would you love to play, I would always like to play, I think now, more black's position, because I think black's plans are easier to make. I think it's much easier for black to continue now in the game stage. We have bishop to b3, knight to c5, normal attack against this weak pawn on d3, knight to c4 hitting the queen, but now with queen to f6 you just basically improve the position of the queen. The queen wanted to get on f4 anywhere, and now also knight to e6, knight to f4 is a problem. So what should white do? First of all, the bishop is hanging, so that's why bishop to a2 had to be played, but now also the e5 is weak here in black's position, so that's why rook to e5, controlling now the pawn, rook to e8, controlling now the pawn on e5, and now comes, believe me or not, already the critical moment of the game, and which is really crazy when we think about it harder. I think many of us would play this move, but actually it's a huge blunder. Look at this. King to g2 was played by Javokhir Sindarov, and as I said, if I would have played this position with the white pieces, king to g2 would be at least one of my options for sure. Maybe I would play it immediately, improving simply the position of the king, getting it connected to the knight in f3. Then we can play, of course, free with our queen, getting also maybe somehow the king connected to the rook on the f file. King to g2 seems like a really natural idea, but this is a huge mistake. Queen to e3, again, a must move here for white in order to control the f4 square. In the continuation, maybe black could maybe take the pawn on a4, but then it gets really spectacular. Then we can play this one. Knight takes e5. Look at this. Rook to e5. This wasn't played in the game, but this would be the suggested line by the Stockfish engine. Look at this. Knight takes e5, queen to e5, d4. You're getting the fork. You have to take it out. Now we play queen to g5. You cannot play f6 because of the bishop's activity. You have to play rook to e8, but now we pick up the piece. You pick up also the pawn on b2, and here actually all of black is down the exchange. Black can play the game because black's king is much more secured. White would have the situation where white is up the exchange but has a naked king, but the engine, as I said, gives here also good chances for white. So very a spectacular continuation it would have been. Here after queen to e3, what you could play is also to take out now the pawn from the c file with the knight from the c file. Then we can also pick up this one. So this was the only chance here for Javokhir Sindarov to somehow continue in this very dynamic middle game. But he played king to g2, and now Vidit reveals actually the huge problems in white's position. Look at this. First of all, knight takes a4. And what should you do now? If you play here, knight takes e5, or maybe here from knight from c to e5, Then there is this problem. Look at this. We have this one. Rook to e5, rook to e5, queen to e5. You can maybe try d4, but now it's a little bit different. We'll simply trade off the pieces, and this is not working. So we're simply continuing the game without the exchange. And look at this. Queen to e4. You can play knight takes e4. The knight is getting out of this mess, and we would not continue, of course, with the situation where we up the exchange. We would continue the game with two minor pieces against the rook. So in my opinion, this is then completely winning endgame here. So this is not working. Also, what could be played here after knight to a5, you could also maybe try knight to a5 after knight takes a4, but now a stunning tactic would be knight to b2. This wasn't playing the game, but as I said, I was really curious why this move king to g2 was such a huge problem. Look at this. You pick up now the knight, but now we pick up the pawn on d3. Look at this. You play maybe this one, but now we can play queen to f4. That's now the huge problem of this particular position. You have to play bishop to d5 in order somehow maybe to disconnect the rook from the knight on d3, but now we can even sack the exchange. Look at this. Bishop to e4 is going to happen. So when the queen comes on f4, I think the position is falling apart here for white. Very spectacular tactics. Also what could have happened in this beautiful game. But after move knight to a4 here, Javokhir Sindarov continued with h4. Tries, of course, to lock the bishop on h5, but here Vidit again doesn't react. Queen to e3 in many lines was the main defensive idea here for white in order to control somehow the active queen. But here Javokhir continued with knight to e5. We have rook takes e5, knight to e5, queen to e5. Now Javokhir tried h4. Even if you play d4, we have seen it before. Still a better continuation, of course, for black. Again, the situation where we have two minor pieces for the rook. Again, I think a completely winning game here for black. After move queen to e5 here, Javokhir Sindarov tried h5, but this is not working. Rook to d3. Beautiful move here by Vidit, of course, also with threats of queen to g3, rook to g3. Here we have bishop to f7, king to f8. Here Vidit is not reacting to any attacks by white. Also bishop to f7 would be perfectly fine, but it's a little bit more complicated. But after king to f8 here by Vidit, now we have rook to d3, knight takes d3, queen to e3 here by Javokhir Sindarov, and now queen to e4 simplifies the game here for black enough. After queen to e4, bishop to e4, the king has to step back, and now finally king takes f7. Again, we have the situation where black has two minor pieces for the rook. Also, instead of this move king to f7, maybe a tiny more accurate move would have been knight to c3, grabbing another pawn. Then after something like, I don't know, b takes c3, now we pick up the piece. You can also pick up now this one, and then with b6 we kick away the rook and simply push this pawn, create, of course, a passer supported by these two minor pieces. This would be then again a devastating position for white. But okay, king to f7 also perfectly fine here for Vidit. We have rook takes a4, bishop to c6, knight takes b2, a similar position. We'll reach now a couple of checks here by Javokhir, but the rook cannot be just the only attacker here. You cannot always include your king into the game. These pieces are holding white's king off in the game. After here g5, we have king to f7, rook to f5, king to e7. Again, a couple of checks by Sindarov. Sindarov, of course, is trying somehow to get a rook behind the pawns, but now finally after king to e6, he gets the rook on f8. But now with knight to c4, this is now really, I think, a completely winning game here for black. Two minor pieces are, of course, supporting two connected passers here on the queen side. The king is far away from the action, so this game is really one-way ticket in black's favor. So rook to h8, Javokhir is of course battling, but of course he took now the pawn. We have an attack against the rook. We have g6, b5, of course, by black, and now simply pushing the pawn further. Here we have a bishop to d5, king to e3, and now a beautiful move again by Vidit Santosh Gujrathi. b2 is of course not possible to take out with the rook because you get knight to c4, the fork against the rook and the king. So that's why h6, we have g takes h6, king to d4, knight to f5 hitting the king. We have c6 protecting now the bishop, and after rook takes b2, king to f6. In this particular position, actually Javokhir Sindarov resigned. There's no good way, of course, to protect the pawn on g6. We'll simply take it out in the next move with the king. We have now then two passers that are here on the queen side and the king side. The position is stretched for the rook. We have still two minor pieces on the board, and it was a fair resign, I think, by Javokhir Sindarov. Vidit Santosh Gujrathi won this beautiful, beautiful game with the black pieces, and as I said, he's now the sole leader of this very, very strong tournament, this beautiful FIDE Grand Swiss in 2023. So this was really, really cool. I think in the next round Vidit is playing with the white pieces, so I'm not sure what's going to happen. I'm sure maybe that he'll not lose the game. Maybe he'll play for a solid draw, because then he has still great chances, but he's now the hunted one. 11 players with 5 points are hunting now Vidit Santosh Gujrathi. It's maybe not a familiar situation for him, because he has played many epic and beautiful tournaments, and he's a really strong player. But I'm not sure when he won maybe a strong tournament like this, but now he has great chances. I wish him all of the best. It would be also a cool thing maybe to see Vidit Santosh Gujrathi in the FIDE candidates in 2024. So epic game. You see how dirty really sometimes the Italian opening can be, tiny little in inaccuracy in the beginning, and the game was basically over for Javokhir Sindarov. Vidit Santosh Gujrathi used his chances. Really a good game here by the Indian top grandmaster. So okay, if you want to see some other chess games here on my YouTube chess channel, check out our Cop the Chess Games, also some games that we have analyzed before. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and what do we say? Chess is the best, of course.